Getting stuck in a self-referential loop occurs, for example, we can see it in Christianity, where the Bible says that the Bible is the Word of God. And God says to read the Bible. And the Bible says the Bible is the Word of God. And so if you just go round and round on that, there's no actual input in data. You can go around endlessly, right? Of course, you should read the Word of God, and the Bible says this is the God. And of course, you would want to listen to the words of the God, right? The top one, the most important one. And then when you put a foundation under this referential, self-referential loop, where if you don't do it, you will be burned alive for all eternity. And if you do, you will live happily ever after, right? It's a pretty, anyone want to be burned for all eternity? And then you can surround that self-referential group or loop with a self-referential group where everyone around you agrees and based on their agreement supports you for belonging to that self-referential loop and punishes you in some way, like don't spend time with that family, they're not as Christian as we are, or don't do this, or that's not the, and it gets down to the micro level, right? Where, it's not just one self-referential cult. It's like, these are the good Christians, and we're not those types of Christians, right? So, you might as, if you're moving from Muslim to Christianity, then you have to figure out which of all the right Christian churches that all know the one true way, unlike the other ones, right, who are teaching the false prophecies. And then you will quickly get into the, if anyone is candid, when you look at whatever it is, pedophilic priests or this or that, then, I was hosting a dinner. One of my landscape crew is a priest, and he will gladly say that 90% of Christians are hypocrites. They're not living the true Christianity. So then, once you've found your little sect, this is the right group of Christians, then 90% of those are, of course, not living it the way they should, and so you've got very poor odds. One is one part of that, but the other thing, it binds you up into a, there's no way out of that framework within the framework itself, and so you have to face death, you have to face the fear of hell, eternal damnation, in order to step out of the self-referential loop. And the things that are actually most important to any human being is improving sustainable well-being and decreasing chronic and unnecessary suffering, including improving intelligence, which is the efficiency with which time, money, and natural resources, energy, is transformed into sustainable well-being, right? So, we're all converting energy to the best of our ability into sustainable well-being as we understand that, in following a map, following a recipe that was either given to us or which we have somewhat or fully modified and iterated, right? So those are the two choices: be given a recipe by copying your parents, and that's the default, but then you can reject that recipe and build something else. But it's not entirely different. Whatever you build your recipe from, right, it may look like, for example, that this is something entirely different, but if I take my iteration from Christianity towards the Lazaris material, Christians helped build this screen behind me. Christians helped sell the camera equipment. Christians helped invent and utilize the monetary system that facilitated this. So you never create something entirely new. The new thing is recreated. Nothing is created or destroyed, but it's transformed. This energy pattern in this form gets de-energized, and then that energy moves over to this new form, which is made out of the ingredients, because that's all that's there of the old form, right? When a body is laid to rest 2 feet underground and a garden is planted on top, the nitrogen in the blood and bones, etc., is transformed. It's moving in its form. And now you have flowers and plants growing that once was body, right? So it's not that the energy is lost, but it's changing form. So, the thing I'm addressing here is the self-referential nature of the Lazaris paradigm, right? So, most people can understand, particularly if they're in a new thought paradigm, that Christianity is a cult, right? That everyone dogmatically has to ascribe to every detail of one thing, and that's the right thing, and then the other thing is the wrong thing. And it is because it says so, and it says so because it is, right? So we can all understand that. But any self-referential group has a tendency it develops a cult, a culture, and as long as it references itself, it's not likely to iterate. It's not likely to evolve and change. But if it's referencing sustainable well-being and chronic suffering, then that movement from chronic and unnecessary suffering towards sustainable well-being is an infinite continuum, right? There's no point on the infinite continuum of well-being. It's an infinite continuum because it's all relative, right? If you're here on the continuum, and down here is more suffering, and up here is more well-being, if you're there, then going here is moving towards well-being. But if you're here, going there is moving towards chronic and unnecessary suffering. It's going backwards, right? Everyone wants to feel sustainably better. They want to avoid feeling chronically worse. And it's an infinite continuum, right? There's no point on this continuum where it can't get better or worse, right? You can come down here, and then better would be up here, and then worse would be down here, right? So it's an infinite continuum, and perfection is not an option within physicality, right? Because the conscious mind is composed of language, which is a system of organizing things. So there's not, and the system is not perfect, right? Because I can say hand, it sounds perfect, right? A hand, what is it? Well, where's the line? Where's the line between where the hand becomes wrist? Well, you can draw it and say, okay, that's the line. But it's not a perfect line. Someone else might draw it a little differently. But it's, more importantly, it's completely flawed in the sense that a hand does not exist without a wrist, without an arm, without a body, without a planet, without food, without air, without a Big Bang, without a universe. This does not exist without an infinitely large number of things that it is connected to inextricably. This hand doesn't exist without gravity. Pretty big connection, right? So if something doesn't exist without something else, it's a trick of language to pretend that it is distinct. But that's how we think. We cut the world into language, and then we pretend that the language is real. We pretend, but it's not real. If a hand cannot exist without an arm, it isn't a hand. It's a small piece of an integrated ecology. We just, talk about it because it's useful. The illusion is useful. Your hand, not the arm. It helps to locate a pattern. But that pattern is not actually separate from all the other patterns in existence. And so, that's problematic in any system. It's why things cannot be perfect. There's no perfect way to cut the whole into pieces. And once you've cut it into pieces, there's no perfect way to understand the relay of energy between all of the interconnected pieces. And all consciousness is built on the foundation of language. We cannot think without words. We can be present without words. But as soon as we think, I am present, in order to become conscious of the presence, we've now created an I that doesn't actually exist, and an am that is inextricably connected to am not, and exist, which is inextricably connected to not existing, and every other thing that exists. So in that sense, it's absolutely meaningless. We can say, I am present, and if we pretend that the present is distinct from the past and the future, we've fumbled it again, because it isn't. You cannot have a present without a past and a future. You cannot have a future without a present and a past and another future, right? Meaning you cannot take the one, time, and cut it into bits and then have some of those bits exist without the other bits. It just doesn't work, right? How can you take this necklace? Like, there's nothing that can be done to science that will see this necklace disappearing in the future. You can vaporize it, but you'll have the vapor, and that vapor will exist until it turns into something else. You can't actually get rid of it throughout the entirety of time, which means that this energy has a future and a past and a present. It's an energy we call necklace, right? And it is useful to call it a necklace, but it doesn't exist in the present independent of the past and the future, right? So this is, just a little bit of context for, why all systems are flawed. You can also see that geometrically, where you take the one and you divide it into three, and this is your system for reality, right? You say heart, mind, body. And that kind of covers it, right? But what about these bits that don't fit inside that box? Those are unconscious within the paradigm of heart, mind, body. They don't fit if you just divide the one into three. Now you can divide the one into two, good and bad, black and white, up and down, male and female. But can you have one without the other? Can you have men without women? It's kind of hard biologically, or the other way around. So these divisions are mental divisions that create consciousness, right? We're creating words through using distinctions, using knives, and they don't work very well when we try to pretend that they are actually distinct, right? When you need black to contrast with white in a completely white reality where it just doesn't, you're unconscious because there's no distinction, right? When you need that in order to define the one and be conscious of it, then it's connected, right? So, having moved into somewhat of the Lazaris terrain, there is a self-referential loop, and it kind of goes like this. Lazaris is the highest being. Lazaris has said that. Lazaris says they're the highest resonance to ever touch the planet and to ever will touch the planet and whoever has touched the planet. And reality is ultimately resonant causation. So there we have the ultimate deity, the same Christianity, the ultimate deity. This is the highest God, the will of God, and da-da-da. So all reality is resonance causation, and we are the highest being. And because we're the highest being, the highest resonance, because we're the highest resonance, you should listen to what we say. And what we say is all reality is resonant causation. And we're the highest resonance. So now you've got a nice loop here. Now, it's not rational. It's not rational to say, you know what? Even though Lazaris is the be-all and end-all of resonance, and even though Lazaris says that resonance causation is the highest, and most important form of reality creation, and even though that's what we're all doing, right? We're all interested in that domain, right? That drive to feel sustainably better and avoid feeling chronically worse is the drive to create a more intelligent reality, a reality that produces more sustainable well-being with less unnecessary chronic suffering, right? That's the drive. We're all on that drive. It's built-in biological, right? Just give the body some ice cream or poke it and see how the body reacts. It's biological. You move away from something that pokes you. You move towards, when you're hungry, some ice cream, right? Something that tastes good. You move away from, something that's shocking you, whatever, and you move towards something that's more peaceful, right? We all want to feel good, and it's built into our body, right? So what we've just established there in that loop is that the most intelligent answers will be found within the Lazaris material, right? And so Lazaris strengthens that a little bit by saying, we won't talk about other teachers and other books and other material out there, and we won't recommend them because we can't speak to their excellence, but we can speak to our excellence. We're satisfied with everything that we produce, and so that's all that we'll recommend. So we're building the loop there, right? So do you want to go out and learn from someone that Lazaris isn't comfortable advocating for? Or would you like to stay in the loop of the highest resonance of the highest being with the excellent techniques that work? So the next, this part of this loop is built by our techniques work. Our techniques work if you didn't get what you desired, you didn't want it. So in other words, there's no flaw to be found in Lazaris. The only flaw, if there is one, is you. And if you work with the material, you will fix that flaw, right? If you have payoffs, if you have negative ego, if you have dark laws, if you have bottom lines, if you have this, then this will fix it, right? And who doesn't want to fix the flaw that would stop you getting all that you want? So the next part of the loop is it's endless. Not entirely, right? Because you can actually do, listen to, all several thousand hours of the Lazaris material, and do some some version of all those different steps and protocols and all that. And then by the time you're done, you've got to probably start all over again, because you can't do all of the blendings and all of the inner journeys and all of the red label and all of the yellow label at the same time. And so by the time you've done the month of this, then it's probably time to do the month of that. But now you're not doing this one. And so that the fact that there isn't enough time in a day to do all of the Lazaris techniques in any given day means you go round and round. And the other part of the self-referential loop is I have never met, whether it's Jach, Penny, Concept Synergy employees, Lazaris friends, I have never met anyone associated with Lazaris that I wanted to emulate or saw them kind of in bliss and in kind of having what they wanted and all of that, right? Whatever it is that you define as conscious, sustainable, fun, and success. And of course, there's a continuum, right? So it's not black or white, just like any other part of the world is not black or white, right? So I haven't met or seen the Lazaris friend that has had kind of anything close to what I would call kind of like that's the place we want to get to, right? Whatever that is, right? So that includes me, right? I'm probably at least 70% away from the ideal, whatever it would be. I want to create this, I want to create that. At least 70% away from that, right? And that's after thousands of goal accomplishments. So thousands of goals accomplished, hundreds of thousands invested in personal growth, thousands of hours in personal growth, and I regularly meet people who are happier than me, more successful in navigating parts of their life, less critical. Because let's face it, this is a critical assessment in this terrain. So that means in the loop, what that means is that I didn't want that success, which means I need to be more conscious of why I didn't want it, which means I then have to work with, whether it's negative ego or the bottom line or conquering fear or ending guilt or ending self-pity or fear of success. So I've already thrown my life, into chaos, just trying to pack that into a month, let alone a day, right? And so which is it, right? Which is it? Because it's in a self-referential loop. It's got to be something. Now, our trusty Lazaris friends are here to help. And you can do a study if you'd like. I'm not doing well here, you say to a I don't think I've ever encountered a Lazaris friend saying, how can I help, right? Or kind of taking me outside of the Lazaris material. So I would say that, this loop is created then by a Lazaris friend recommending, surprise, surprise, because of course they want you to have the best of the best in history. Why have you worked with this tape? Oh, you have? Well, what about this tape? Oh, you haven't done that in the last year. Well, I'm glad I can be of help, right? I'm delighted that I can recommend that you go and start that 7-month process, right? Or that 7-stage process and do this and do this. And it didn't help? Well, I guess you didn't want it. Maybe you want your self-pity. Anyway, here's another tape for you, and off you go. So within that framework, you can go around endlessly. Now, if you feel shame, then you can start doing the shame series. The shame is, I guess I'm not doing it right. Here I am trying to do this, and I guess I'm not doing it right. I didn't really want it. I still have some payoffs, or maybe it's the bottom line needs a little attention, or maybe it's the dark law, or maybe it's my child who, after hundreds of hours of inner child meditation, is still, I didn't do the meditation good enough, and so I have to go down. No, maybe it's my image. My image is this, and then maybe it's that, right? So this is going to go around endlessly, and you will find that you and I and, people involved with this particular loop and material are going around endlessly. But going around in circles doesn't feel very good, ultimately. So then it creates backlash. It creates pain, right? So, I thought I did this, I thought I did that. I didn't have enough time to do this and this and this, and it's still not working. And I don't want to hear, do this, do this, do this, right? And so that gap between, because Lazaris will talk about in the abstract, like the New Age and all this wonderful thing. But who exactly is experiencing that? It's not Penny. It's not Jach. Who is the one who's, in this great enlightened state? And why haven't they created world peace or whatever it is that would be the marker, right, of this new world? Everything else is an illusion, including me, of course, right? I'm an illusion. Is there no one in the reality that is able and willing to, to create the new world or whatever in a way that someone looking at it, someone objectively would say, yeah, that's really new and that's a lot better. And it is easier to succeed, and that's why we're succeeding and succeeding again and again. I haven't met them, right? And so maybe they're out there, but don't look at me, right? I haven't figured out how to do any of this any better than you or anyone else I know, right? So that's a pretty big loop, right? Because you can just stay in that loop forever. But that's the problem with a self-referential loop. And it's not unique to Lazaris, it's not unique to Christianity, it's not unique to Buddhism, right? In Buddhism, when a parent molests a child, they teach the child to let it go, right? To just surrender, right? And forgive the parent. Then, of course, one time wasn't enough, and so the parent molests the child again, and that requires another few weeks of meditation to forgive the parent. And understand, let go, not hold on to the past and all of this. And then they get molested again, right? And now it's not as easy to just kind of be peaceful in all this because there's shame and there's this and all this stuff. And that'll go on forever as well, right? Just find the middle way, the surrender to the universe, or have a better attitude, right? After you've been raped a few times, if you could improve your attitude, then, it's, all kinds of miracles are waiting for you if you can just, embrace what the universe has to offer, other than rape, right? And so if you actually get upset and, hurt and feel small about that, then, well, you weren't having as positive an attitude. So the law of attraction, you see. The first rape or whatever, that was probably you attracted that from a past life, or Lazaris would say you chose and wrote that script, right? And then when you're raped again, it's because you didn't figure out how to feel good and attract something better after you were raped. I mean, and that's obviously a great gift of the universe to give us another chance to, look forward. And then, now you're starting to feel angry and distrusting of the monks that are advising you to do this. And now you're a difficult person, right? You're not going to attain enlightenment because, you're too attached to being raped or not, and, or whether your child is raped. And it's just, there's other people that just manage to let that go, right? And so, Buddha shining down. It doesn't matter the domain. Self-referential loops are a problem because they limit, right? So the natural part of the Lazaris loop would be to hone in on Lazaris and just do that. So I thought I would talk about the things that, in my experience, work better than Lazaris, right? Because that's out of the loop. That's just talking about personal experience, right? Data, what actually works, not what Lazaris says works, but what actually does work. And so a couple of things. Number one, breathing and doing kind of Eckhart Tolle, but there's a book that touches on it a little bit called Present Moment Awareness. I think that's it. But the gist of it is breathing with a mantra, 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the evening. This is energizing my body more than any Lazaris technique that I know. So I'm using it 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the evening, right? And by the way, we're not trying to create a new self-referential loop where you're stuck in doing breathing, because that's part of the problem, right? The problem is wanting simplicity at the expense of success and fun, right? So conscious breathing in some kind of a mantra that just stops the looping of thoughts, for me, has improved my well-being several 100% over the past week or so of using it. And it has gotten less effective than in the first few times. That's part of hedonic adaptation, any number of reasons for that. But, I think it's probably the same with the Lazaris material. The first time you do this, it kind of has more impact. And then, by the time you've, at least in my experience, I think I've done the self-forgiveness meditation probably, 50 times by now. And the last time I did it a few nights ago, it had less effect than some of the earlier times that I did it. and often talking with a therapist, the first few visits leads to more insight than the 30th or 40th visit, right? So there's a growth plateau plane, and that's, good to be aware of. But I'm still getting a tremendous amount of value that I cannot get in any other location that I'm aware of from this conscious breathing and mantra. And to my knowledge, Lazaris has never, mentioned this basic technique. Very basic. Anyone can do it, right? And I think one of the reasons if someone gave me a pile of Lazaris techniques, like, oh, you're feeling anxious? Well, listen this, do this, do this, do this, do this, and do this. And then by that time, you'll understand why you're not doing this. Then you can do this and this and this. And then all this, anxiety and stress will clear up. Thank you, but no thank you, right? That just produces more anxiety. Now I have to do all these things, and I have to do them right, and I'm wrong if I didn't do them right. That's not a gift, right? That's depression. That's rage. That's fuck you and your bullshit, right? I've had enough of that path, but there's no way out, right? For the people recommending endless, Lazaris techniques. So meanwhile, 15 minutes of breath work and resonance up to 300%. Or we could start listening to the long list of payoffs and and the long list of this and how, my negative ego is lying and this and that and all, and don't give up. And then figure out why concept synergy isn't doing those things that apparently work, but they don't do them, right? And so, well, what's going on with that? Or you can breathe and transcend, right? Well, it's a no-brainer. That's a gift, right? So that's working better than Lazaris. Microdosing mushrooms and San Pedro cactus. And I say microdosing, it's sub-psychedelic threshold. So less than a gram of mushroom, maybe 0.5 grams, something like that. 5 grams is considered, a very strong, experience. So 0.5 gram could be less. Start with maybe a quarter of a gram. Could be a good place to start and see, and it takes time. It's a mild impact for about 10 hours. And definitely, spend the time to learn about what can go wrong and, learn about the terrain. Basically, it's incredibly powerful technology. But that works better than Lazaris, right? I could probably listen to 6 hours of Lazaris and not get as much value as microdosing, right? For whether it's depression or shame. Depression, shame, guilt, panic, anxiety, because these are all about disconnection between self and ego, right? And by reducing blood to the default mode network of the brain, we're reducing blood to the habitual thoughts of the ego. And it's just giving a little bit of room to start seeing and feeling outside of the cult dynamic, whether it's the Lazaris cult or the American cult or the cult of the ego and its experiences. So there's a little bit of flexibility. Works significantly better than many Lazaris techniques in a lot of the time. Another thing is experiential exercises in relationship. Right? Learning to ask for permission, learning to state boundaries, learning to negotiate for a win-win works way better than doing any of the Lazaris love tapes and intimacy tapes and things like that. Just try doing a Lazaris tape, with a new date or something, and or trying to talk your way through that and see what emerges statistically. Do that 100 times and then do something like making a really high-value invitation, active listening, learning to ask the right questions. What's the most important thing in your life these days? What's the biggest pain point? And where are you stuck? And how do you want to work through that? Those questions will open up doorways that conscious and intelligent people can navigate through and do. Do you want to listen to this Lazaris tape and do this? Not so much, right? Criticizing ourselves or the other for not doing the fifth step properly? Not so much. So that works a lot better and is a lot more fun. So it's more successful and more fun. Want to make money? Want to be successful in business? Studying biographies. For example, the Tim Ferriss Show in a blog, etc. Far more useful than Lazaris if you want to run a business, for example, and learn how to do a good job at that. So easy, right? Listen to all the Lazaris tapes about success and money and abundance, or study the Tim Ferriss Show and take one to three basic steps, that you've learned and apply them. Then, there's great success there. And similarly, there's Audible. I bought 500 books on Audible, listened to them 3 hours a day, and, made at least $300,000 from doing that. I don't think I've done that, from a Lazaris technique or bunch of techniques, right? So that works better than Lazaris. Doing experiential groups to connect and meet the needs. So we're looking at needs, basically survival, making money, learning how to navigate and things, Audible, etc., I would say, and biographies of people who have done that. Security of survival, structuring, learning how to write contracts, various things like that. Again, 10 times more useful, than Lazaris in my experience. Love and belonging, attending groups that facilitate conscious intimacy, establishing rapport. Writing a book, for example, works much better, right? I got tired of dates that didn't know that they didn't know and didn't know what to do about that. So I wrote a little book and handed it out, and intelligent women read the book, and then they understood what they didn't know, and then they understood and knew, and then they, some of them could then respond in a way, and it's so much easier, right? So, something like that works better than saying, why haven't I attracted the one, right? There's just millions of people wandering around wondering why they haven't attracted the one. And then getting upset that the one doesn't do what their imaginary one was supposed to do. And then Lazaris telling them that they didn't want them to do that. And that's that's just an endless nightmare of round and round and round. Never noticed any benefit that. So there are tons of things, well, maybe not tons of things, but there are very clear niches where Lazaris is unique and excellent and valuable. But, this video is to break the loop with actual data. And the most wonderful thing that Concept Synergy could possibly do for its Lazaris friends, to help them break out of the loop and break out the loop themselves, is to create and publish the questionnaire that I've created and that a few Lazaris friends have answered, and which is about what's working for you and what's not, and where, and if Jach filled that out, it would be interesting, because Jach does not rely on Lazaris either. He goes to different workshops and stuff like that that work, that have a niche. And so that's the purpose of this video, is to say, break out of the loop and focus on actually what creates conscious fun for you and conscious success, rather than, the endless 7-step processes by one person. It doesn't matter who it is, one entity, one person, one school of thought. What you desire, what you need, what you want is likely out in the unknown, and you can't find the unknown until you step outside the dogma of whatever belief system that you are certain, right? And travel has also worked, right? Endless complaints about you shouldn't be doing this and you shouldn't be doing that. And you just travel to another country where they love it. So now all this, quote, inappropriate behavior is a blessing, right? It's been pointed out, for example, that the very things that help certain founders of great companies become great founders of great companies, those very same qualities and habits and things would have got them fired as employees. So maybe if you can't keep a job because of all the disconnects between how you see things should be done, and you should start a great company, right? But, of course, learn from people who actually do that and blossom into that, rather than just hope it happens. Thank you.